All right, let's dive into this one. A Farewell to Arms. We've got excerpts, summaries, even some critical analysis to unpack here. Should be interesting to see why it's still such a powerful read after almost 100 years, you know?
Yeah, it's really remarkable how Hemingway takes this massive event, World War I, and tells this intimate story, love and loss, set against that backdrop. He really gets into the heads of the characters, the emotional impact of war, instead of just battles and
It's
tactics.
definitely not your typical war story. That's got to be part of its lasting appeal, right?
Yeah.
So we start with Frederic Henry, American guy driving an ambulance for the Italian army. Close to the action, but not like a combat soldier at first.
Right, and that distance is important. He's seeing the horrors of war, but he's almost detached. Like he's observing it clinically, even his relationships, the women he meets, almost like a defense mechanism against the trauma.
Trying to make sense of it all from a safe distance.
Hmm.
Then we meet Catherine Barkley, English nurse. She's dealing with the loss of her fiancé, so she's vulnerable, open about her grief. Total opposite of Frederick's guarded personality.
And that clash is what makes their early interactions so interesting. There's this playful banter, almost like a game they're playing, but you can sense a deeper connection building there. And I think Hemingway uses that word games intentionally. They're both testing the waters, wondering if a relationship can even survive in wartime.
And speaking of atmosphere, we can't forget the rain. Hemingway uses it throughout the novel.
Oh, absolutely. Rain is practically another character. Like when they first connect, it's pouring, they're both seeking shelter. It creates this romantic mood, sure, but it's more than that. It mirrors their inner states. Isolated, unsure of the future, but drawn to each other despite the bleakness.
Yeah, like a reflection of their emotional landscape. Beautiful, but also kind of tragic.
Exactly. And that's just one example of Hemingway's style. The writing seems simple on the surface, but there's so much depth beneath it, emotionally, thematically. It's what he called the iceberg theory.
I love that.
Mhm.
Okay, so we've got war-torn Italy, our disillusioned ambulance driver, a grieving nurse, and this symbolic rain hanging over everything. Where do we go from here? I'm hooked already.
Well, this is where the love story takes center stage. Frederick gets badly injured in a mortar attack and ends up in a hospital in Milan. And guess who happens to be stationed there?
No way, Catherine. Isn't that a little too convenient? Like fate stepping in.
It does feel that way, right? But that's how Hemingway sets it up. They're suddenly taken away from the front lines, thrown together in this enclosed space, a hospital. It's not just flirting in a war zone anymore. Catherine's caring for him. They're having deeper conversations, more personal. They're creating their own world within the hospital walls, almost forgetting about the war outside.
And then, boom, everything changes. Catherine reveals she's pregnant.
Talk about a twist. And Frederick's reaction, it's a mixed bag. Joy, fear, apprehension. He's going to be a father. In the middle of a war he's becoming more and more disillusioned with. Really highlights how fragile happiness is in this setting. They've found this joy, this connection, but it feels so precarious, like it could be ripped away at any moment.
Which, knowing Hemingway, it probably will be. That idyllic time in Milan can't last forever. I'm guessing part 3 is where he gets sent back to the front.
You got it. And the war has only gotten worse. The Italian retreat from Caporetto, it's a major turning point, both for the story and for Frederick. Hemingway doesn't hold back on the brutality, the desperation, the moral decay, soldiers deserting, complete chaos. It's during this retreat that Frederick's disillusionment really peaks.
He basically says, I'm done, both figuratively and literally.
Exactly. He gets falsely accused of desertion, faces execution. To save himself, he jumps into a river, escapes. But it's more than just a physical escape, don't you think?
Yeah, it feels symbolic, like he's washing away his past, his ties to the war, choosing survival, love, Catherine, over a cause he no longer believes in.
Exactly. That moment in the river, it's like a baptism, a rebirth. He's choosing his own happiness, his relationship with Catherine. He's saying a farewell to arms right then and there.
That escape from the river, it really sets the tone for everything that follows. Like
Right.
he's literally swimming away from his old life.
Yeah, and it doesn't let up. When he sets out to find Catherine, they risk everything to get to Switzerland, neutral territory,
Yeah.
crossing Lake Maggiore at night in a rowboat. Hemingway makes you feel every bit of that journey, the cold, the desperation, knowing they could get caught at any moment.
A desperate bid for freedom. They've already lost so much.
Yeah.
But then reaching the Swiss Alps, that's like a whole new world, right? Pristine, untouched by the war.
You'd think they could finally find peace there, right? But even in that setting, there's this sense of foreboding. Hemingway starts dropping hints. Catherine's anxieties about the baby coming. This unease creeps in, like maybe they can't truly escape what they've been through, like something's looming.
It's like he's setting us up for what's coming next. Part 5, The part I was dreading, to be honest. You're so invested in their happiness at this point, it's hard to face what happens.
He's a master at that, building up hope and that, well, it's Hemingway. It's gonna get real.
Tell me about it. The birth scene, it's brutal. He doesn't spare you any details. You feel everything, her pain, Frederick's helplessness. The tension just keeps building.
Yeah, and you're so invested by that point. They've come so far, overcome so much. It feels like this is it, their reward, a new life, a symbol of their triumph over everything. Then the baby's stillborn, just like that.
Devastating. And it's not even the end of it. It's like one blow after another.
It's the beginning of the end, really. Catherine, she starts hemorrhaging. There's nothing the doctors can do. And Frederick, this guy who stared down war, death, he's powerless. Watching the woman he loves slip away.
It's almost worse than losing the baby, you know?
Yeah.
To see her, she's been so strong throughout everything, and now this, it feels so unfair. And he can't do anything. Just heartbreaking.
But even in her final moments, she's still so strong. That line, "I'm not afraid, I just hate it." It's acceptance, but also this fierce will to live, to hold on to their love. So much packed into that one line.
And then she's gone. Hemingway's description is so spare, so simple, but it hits you like a ton of bricks. And I noticed he brings back the rain in that last scene. Frederick walks out of the hospital. It's pouring. It's like all that grief, the weight of everything they've lost, it's just washing over him.
Powerful image, right? That walk in the rain. It sums up the whole book, you know? The innocence lost, the reality of war, the love, the grief.
Full circle, the rain. From that romantic beginning to this, it's not just symbolic anymore. It's like a physical manifestation of his grief. Like the whole world is weeping for her.
That's what Hemingway does so well. He takes these simple things, rain, a walk, and he loads them with meaning. It's not about fancy words. It's about the emotion behind them, the raw human experience.
And that's what makes it so powerful. It's not just an anti-war book. It's about love, loss, trying to find meaning in a world that often feels meaningless.
It's about those universal experiences, right? We all deal with these things, the fragility of life, love, the fact that loss is inevitable.
It makes you think about the big questions. What is love? What is loss? How do you live when there's so much suffering? Hemingway doesn't give you easy answers, but he makes you confront those questions.
And that's the sign of great literature. It stays with you, makes you think, question things, maybe even find a little hope in the midst of all the darkness.
Hope. Interesting word to use with this book. It's so undeniably tragic.
True, it is. But there's a kind of resilience there, too, even in the face of all that loss. Their love, even though it's cut short, it shows us that human connection can be a powerful thing, even when everything else is falling apart.
Their love illuminates the whole story, even in its absence. It makes me think about another kind of farewell that's happening. Not just arms, but a farewell to innocence, to those naive beliefs we have when we're young.
You're right, a farewell to a simpler view of the world. And that probably resonates even more with us now than it did back then. Our world is constantly challenging our beliefs, forcing us to face the hard truths.
And in a way, that's what makes Frederick's journey so relatable. He starts out detached, almost cynical. But through Catherine, he experiences this awakening.
Painful, but it changes him. He sees the world differently. We all go through those kinds of awakenings, even if it's not because of war, our own battles, our own losses, our own farewells to innocence.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here, a farewell to arms, but it's the kind of book you could talk about forever, you know? Always something more to uncover.
Absolutely, and that there's no right answer, no single interpretation. What hits you might be different for me, and that's okay. That's what makes it so great.
Exactly. It sparks conversation, makes you think, debate. Almost 100 years later, we're still talking about it. That's pretty amazing.
It is testament to Hemingway's skill. He tapped into something timeless, something that still resonates with us today.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this. What resonated with you? Was it Frederick's journey? Their love story? The power of the human spirit? Think about it. There's no easy answers in A Farewell to Arms. But it's definitely a book that will stay with you. You know, it's funny, as we've been talking about A Farewell to Arms, I keep coming back to that title, A Farewell to Arms. Seems simple enough, right? But it's got to be about more than just Frederick leaving the army.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There are so many layers to it. Farewell to war, to the fighting, the violence, but also a farewell to something deeper, I think. Innocence, illusions, that youthful belief that love can conquer anything.
And that's what makes it so powerful, so relatable. I mean, we're not fighting in World War I, but we all go through those kinds of farewells, you know, those moments when we realize the world isn't what we thought it was.
Hemingway gets that, you know, that disillusionment. He doesn't sugarcoat it. The pain, the grief, the anger that comes with realizing life isn't fair.
And for Frederick, it's all tied together. Farewell to his buddies, to any purpose he might have found in the war, and then the biggest one, Catherine.
That one stays with you, doesn't it? It's not just her death. It's him letting go of everything they had planned, the future they imagined together.
All that potential lost. The hope just shattered. Like a reminder that even love can't protect us from the hard stuff, from death. That's the real tragedy, I think.
But even with all that, there's a beauty to their story, you know?
Yeah.
It reminds us that even a little bit of happiness, a connection like that, it can make a difference, leave a mark on your life.
It's like that saying, better to have loved and lost, right? A farewell to arms kind of embodies that. Acknowledges the pain, but also celebrates love, how powerful it is, how it can even transcend death.
Yeah. It's a reminder that even when things are darkest, even with all that suffering, the human heart is capable of incredible things. Love, resilience.
And I think that's why this book has lasted. It's about facing the hard stuff head on, the war, the loss, the disillusionment. But it's also about finding the strength to keep going, to find meaning even in the small moments.
Finding connection, purpose, something to believe in when it feels like everything's falling apart. Yeah, I think that resonates with all of us.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into A Farewell to Arms, I want to leave you with a question. What stayed with you? Was it Frederick's journey? That love story? The power of the human spirit? Think about it. No easy answers in A Farewell to Arms, but it's a book you won't soon forget. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.